realize that we shouldn't let the professional class pick our presidents. And that's a very important thing. Now, what an incredible land we live in here. A lot of people like to complain about America and about the bad things that we have done and the bad people who are here. But interestingly enough, when you stop and think about it, we got a lot of people trying to get in here. I don't see anybody trying to escape. So therefore, I don't think it's that bad a place. And it certainly was a great place of dreams for me. As a youngster, I wanted to be a doctor. Skipped right over policemen and firemen and went right to doctor. And I just loved everything that had to do with medicine. I wasn't a very good student. We were desperately poor. There was never money for anything. The only time we could ever go to the Michigan State Fair was when we got those special coupons so you could get in free, but didn't have any money to buy any rides, buy any popcorn. I never tasted cotton candy until I was an adult, and it wasn't that good. Maybe they should have tried frying it, but anyway. But, I had a wonderful mother who believed in me when nobody else did, and made us read. And as I read books, in particular as I read books about people of accomplishment, I came to a fundamental understanding that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. It's not somebody else. And that liberated me. Gave me a new lease on life. And things were going along well, that is, until I got to high school. And then I ran into the worst thing a person can run into. It's called peers. Negative peers. P-E-E-R-S. That stands for people who encourage errors, rudeness, and stupidity. And that's exactly what they were doing. And the sad thing is, it doesn't end in high school. It continues throughout life. And we have that problem right now with so many people who allow other people to think for them and do for them. And we're rude and we're discourteous. All you have to do is go to an article and then go to the comment section. You will not get down 5 lines before people start calling each other nasty names and acting like third graders. Apologies to any third graders out there. It is very sad what we have allowed ourselves to degenerate into. But there I got caught up in that peer pressure, and they're trying to tell you what kind of clothes to wear, who you should be hanging out with, and how you should be thinking. And I went from an A student to a B student to a C student. My grades kept plummeting. I didn't care because I was cool. Getting the high fives, the low fives, the pats on the back, doing the Detroit strut, I was cool. And fortunately, I only wasted 1 year before my mother was able to get me to understand that it wasn't what you wore on the outside, it's what you had up here that made the difference. And I got back on the right track, and I was an A student, and the guys were calling me Nerd and Poindexter and Uncle Tom and every name you could imagine. But I would always shut them up by saying, let's see what you're doing in 20 years, and let's see what I'm doing in 20 years. And they must have believed me, because when I graduated from high school, they all voted me most likely to succeed, which means they knew what was important. They were too lazy and trifling to do it themselves, and they wanted other people with them. Misery loves company. But when I got back on the right track, I had a goal. I wanted to be a contestant on my favorite TV show, which was GE College Bowl. Anybody remember GE College Bowl? Yeah, okay, there's some old people here. It was cool. It came on every Sunday, and they had 4 contestants on each team, 2 different colleges, and they would ask questions about science and math, history, geography. I was really good in all that stuff. But they would also ask questions about classical art and classical music. Now, there was no way you were going to learn any classical art or classical music at Southwestern High School in inner city Detroit. I mean, in my high school, if you said something about Van Gogh, they would have said, put gas in it, the van will go. I had no idea what you were talking about. So I just made an executive decision. I would get on the bus day after day, week after week, month after month, and traveled down to the Detroit Institute of Arts, roamed through those galleries until I knew every picture, who painted them, what period it represented, listening to my portable radio, Bach, Telemann, Mozart. Kids in Detroit thought I was nuts. A black kid in Motown listening to Mozart. And I tried to convince them that the Mo in Motown was Mozart, but nobody was buying it. And I even determined which college I was going to attend based on that show. I was going to apply to the college that won the grand championship in college ball, because I only had enough money to apply to one college. Well, the grand championship was between Harvard and Yale. And Yale demolished Harvard, so I didn't want to go to a school with a bunch of dummies. So I applied to Yale, and fortunately they accepted me with a scholarship. And I was gung-ho, I was going to be a contestant on College Bowl. But the year I went there was the year that College Bowl went off the air. I know, it's a sad story. But you know, but years later when I decided I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, I said, well, what's the best place for neurosurgeon? The place most well known was Johns Hopkins. Cushing, Dandy, Walker, all the famous names. The only problem is they only took 2 people a year out of the top 125 applicants. So how was I going to get to be one of them? But when I went for my interview, the fellow in charge of the neurosurgery program was also in charge of cultural affairs at the hospital. So we talked a little bit about medicine and neurosurgery. Somehow the conversation turned to classical music. And we talked for over an hour about different composers, conductors, orchestras, orchestral halls. The man was on cloud 9. There was no way he wasn't taking me in the program. We had to have somebody to discuss this stuff with. And, you know, I tell young people all the time how important it is, how vitally important it is to learn everything, because you never know what doors will be opened for you. And, you know, people like to pigeonhole and categorize people. You know, a lot of the left-wing media, for instance, say, Carson, he's a neurosurgeon. He's probably very gifted, but he's an idiot savant. He doesn't know anything else about anything else. You know, that's what they think. But no, in fact, with the kind of brains that God endowed us with, we do not have to limit ourselves in any capacity whatsoever. The human brain is the most magnificent organ system in the universe. I mean, it remembers everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard, can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. How many people remember your birthday? Let me just see your hand. Okay, you haven't eaten too much fried food. Okay, this is good. Now, what did your brain have to do for you to respond to that question almost immediately? Just to give you an example of how complex your brain is. First of all, the sound waves had to leave my lips, travel through the air, into your external auditory meatus, travel down to the tympanic membrane, send a vibratory force, which travel across the osculus of the middle ear to the oval and round limb, send a vibratory force to the endolimb, which mechanically distorted the microcilia, converting mechanical energy to electrical energy, which traveled across the cochlear nerve to the cochlear nucleus at the pontomedullary junction, from there to the superior auditory nucleus, ascending bilaterally at the brainstem to the lateral meniscus and the inferior collicus to the on and it goes. But the point being, your brain is so sophisticated, so many things happen for you to do almost nothing. So can you imagine what the human brain can do if you really concentrate on it? And I believe that we, the American people, have the ability to solve the many problems that face us. You know, I think immediately about the things that threaten to destroy us, like the divisiveness that is going on in our society. I got to tell you a secret. We, the American people, are not each other's enemies. The enemies are those people who are trying to make us think that we're each other's enemies. And we have to be smart enough. And, you know, just because you disagree with somebody about something, it doesn't make them your enemy. Somebody that you need to smear and try to destroy their life and all these things that are going on in our society. And I always say if 2 people agree about everything, one of them isn't necessary. And I think everybody is necessary, so we just need to get over that, put that behind us. And, you know, the problems that threaten to destroy us as a nation, they are not Democrat problems. They are not Republican problems. They are American problems versus un-American. And we have got to remember that we are Americans first. That's all the difference in the world. And there are many who do not want us to realize that. The other thing that we can easily solve with our complex brains are the fiscal problems that face us. We are in the process of destroying the future for the next generation. You know, I spent my whole professional career looking out for the welfare of children. And believe me, I was looking forward to retirement and putting my feet up. But I really couldn't, knowing what was going to happen to their future if we continue down the same route. And I got to tell you, it's been both Democrats and Republicans who have been blowing up the budget and destroying the future for our young people. You know, we hear about the national debt, 18.5 to 19 trillion dollars. I mean, we can say those numbers, but do we understand what they mean? Just back it up to 18 trillion. To pay off $18 trillion at a rate of $10 million a day, 365 days a year, it would take you more than 5,000 years. And that's what we are putting on the backs of our young people. And as Thomas Jefferson said, that is immoral, and we have to stop doing. But I got to tell you something, that's the good news, okay? The real problem is the fiscal gap. When you go home today, please look up the fiscal gap. That is the unfunded liabilities that the government has, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all the governmental programs, all the stuff that we owe going forward versus the revenues we expect to collect from Texas and other revenue sources. Those two numbers should be virtually identical if you're responsible. You bring it forward to today's dollars and they're not the number together, it's called the gap. That's the fiscal gap. That number now sits at $211 trillion. Okay, that is a staggering amount. Now, I announced that when I made my announcement for running for president in Detroit, and the next day, left-wing media came out and said, see, we told you Carson doesn't know anything about economics. What is he talking about, this fiscal year? He's crazy. But the day after that, Forbes came out with an article that said 17 Nobel laureates and 1,200 economics professors agree with Carson. So that kind of put a stop to that. But the fact of the matter is, the only reason we can sustain that kind of debt is because we can print money, which we are doing irresponsibly, and that is a privilege that generally goes with the #1 economy in the world, which we have been since the 1870s until very recently, last year, when China took over. And how much longer will it be that we can print money? Because if we can't, and we have that level of debt, guess what's going to happen? It will be much worse than 1929 and the stock market crash. It'll be horrible. And you know, you never hear any politicians talking about this. But I'm not a politician, so I can talk about it. Because you see, they want to get reelected. And I want to save our nation. And I think together, using our brains, we can save. You know, one of the really cool things that I learned as a neurosurgeon, one of the cases of conjoined twins that we were doing, you know, they were joined at the top of the head, facing in the same direction. And I made an executive decision. We had the #1 neurosurgery department in the country with people who were terrific in vascular neurosurgery, in skull-based neurosurgery, in tumor tissue separation. We had a whole host of the best of the best. And rather than me just doing the operation and getting the credit, I got 18 of the neurosurgeons involved, and we slotted them in when we got to the part of the operation where they would be the expert, and we were literally 10 hours ahead of schedule. That's what can happen when you don't care who gets the credit. Time for us to realize that there is nothing wrong with living by godly principles of loving your fellow man, caring about your neighbor, developing your God-given talents to the utmost so that you become valuable to the people around you, having values and principles that govern your life. And if we do that, not only will we remain a pinnacle nation, but we will truly have one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.